everybody. Welcome to LTG Live. My name is Aaron Holt with my good friend and co-host, the one and only Peter Reeves.
What's up, baby? What's
How you
going
doing,
on, man?
man?
I'm doing good.
Dude.
It is Super Bowl Sunday or Wednesday for youth pastors everywhere.
I like that. We'll just have to. We're gonna have to roll with that for a while.
I
I like it really good. Hey, Shar, good to see you. Glad so many of you are joining us right now. And man, we just welcome you. It's gonna be a great conversation today. Peter and I are excited about our guest today. And,
Indeed.
A lot of great youth ministry veteran experience is going to be coming. And so we welcome you. And hey, we are from leadthegeneration.com. So if you want to know what we do, what we're all about, you can find us there. Check out our website there. And we love to resource and equip youth pastors. And that's why we make it a priority every single week on Wednesday at noon to spend an hour with you, to encourage you, to inspire you, to equip you, to give you some practical inspiration. And
yes.
So we're excited about that. Peter, what's new in your life, real quick, before we introduce our guest?
Man,
crazy fun going on that you want to tell us
crazy
about?
fun going on. No, I mean, this is the first time me and the wife are getting away together. We got a youth pastors retreat in the state of Michigan happening.
Nice.
And my mother-in-law's here. We're like, take these kids and we are leaving. Peace.
Wait, is this going to be your first time like going away overnight without the kids? Like,
Yes.
woo, let's go.
Come on.
That's good.
I'm excited. I'm excited to sleep through the night. I kind of forgot what that is. Should be fun.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's going to be great.
Cool.
Man.
What about you, man? Anything new?
Oh, man, we're just getting settled in Pittsburgh. We're enjoying it. And right now, I'm enjoying the 7-0 start to the season. Can I get an amen? You're not a Steelers fan. You don't even know what I'm talking about right now, Peter.
The Steelers? What is going on? Listen, my team is doing really bad right now, so I tend to block out negative things in my life.
Right,
the Falcons are having a difficult season, so I just go ahead and just...
I forgot. Somehow you became an Atlanta fan. So
it's because of Matt Ryan, man. He grew up in the Philly area. I grew up watching him play, and Falcons fan all the way. But they've been having a tough time, so we just block that out. 7-0 start to the season with the Steelers. Wow. Steeler Nation.
Yeah. Let's go. Well, hey, next week, we got a great guest with us. Before today's guest comes on, let me just let you know next week, Wayne Morgan, who's with National Network of Youth Ministries, is going to be with us. And Wayne has an incredible story, not only in relation to youth ministry, but also being a cancer survivor. And so he's going to be with us talking about what he likes to call bonus round living. And so this is going to be a great conversation. So tune in, mark it down in your calendar, and listen. Do us a favor, if you like what we're doing on these Wednesday live streams, or maybe you're listening after the fact on our podcast, which is available on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts. Do us a favor, go to the Lead the Generation page on Facebook, give us a like. You can also share this stream right now because Peter's going to introduce our guest, and this guy. 2 decades plus experience in youth ministry, well-known youth pastor just because of his heart for students and his heart to equip youth pastors. And so you're going to be blessed by this. Peter, introduce our guest today. We want to get this conversation started.
Man, our guest today is just a super seasoned youth pastor, unbelievable guy. I actually interned with this man for an entire year, learned so much from him. His wisdom and wealth of knowledge is just it's extensive. Our guest today is none other than the Joseph Kellogg. Come on, people.
Let's go, Joseph. We're glad you're here, man. Thanks for joining us.
Man, I'm pumped to be here. That was a great introduction by the man, Peter Reeves.
You know, come on.
The Joseph Kellogg from the People's Church in Oklahoma City, right? And
yes, sir.
We're so glad to have you here, and we just appreciate you jumping on board and being a part of today's conversation. And before we jump into the conversation, for those that are watching right now, or for those that are listening after the fact on the podcast, and maybe they're not familiar with you and your ministry, give us like the 60-second Spark Notes, like recap version real quick, right? Condense 20 plus years into a minute for me.
Yeah. Started youth pastoring in August of 2001. And so I'm about 19 and a half years into this as a full-time youth pastor. Now I have a new title as NextGen Pastor, but I've served at a few churches. I was in Oklahoma at 2 different churches for 9 years. And then I served at Oaks Church for 9 years. That's where Peter was a part of our internship there. And then, I've been here for, a year and a half at People's Church as the NextGen Pastor. We launched a youth pastor conference 5 years ago, and trying to equip youth pastors with healthy youth ministries. And I have 4 kids. I have a 15-year-old, a 14-year-old, 10-year-old, and a 3-year-old. So 3 daughters and then a son. And so, and a beautiful wife of 18 years. And so, I love youth ministry. I am a student of youth ministry. I love being in the trenches, and I still love pizza. So you know what? And as long as I'm still loving pizza, I'm still loving youth ministry. Come on.
There you go.
Yeah,
you can stay
that's
in
dope.
No.
Well, Aaron, let me say this really quick. Joseph, I feel like I just want to speak on behalf of, before everyone listens to you, man. This man is the real deal. Me and Joseph's wife, Corby, we led a small group together. So I was in his house every single week, saw him loving on his kids, loving the leaders, loving the ministry. Just absolutely like incredible example for me, just even wanting to do this. And then I remember specifically one time Joseph took me to a conference. It was just me, him, and another student. And so I got to see him up close. I stayed, I can't remember if it was your parents' house or Corby's parents. I don't know. I think I stayed at somebody's house that I didn't know, and they let me stay there. And we went to this conference where Joseph served people, like he was encouraging us to serve the ministry, and I saw it up close. My whole mentality changed after I saw my leaders serving like to a crazy level, and I just appreciate that, man. I don't know if I've ever told you that. I really, really appreciate that. I know you don't just talk it, like you're about it, and I love you. Thanks, for real.
Well, yeah. Thanks, bro. I know so many people are really going to love this conversation that we're going to have today about intentionality and intentional hustle in youth ministry. I know, Peter, you actually have heard some of this content before, so you were excited whenever we decided, hey, let's talk about this. And I'm excited. You sent me your notes, Joseph, and it's just going to be really, really good. So there's going to be a lot of people that are listening that are going to want to connect with you, Joseph. So real quick, before we jump into the topic today, how do people connect with you? Where can they find you? How can they connect with your ministry, not only your ministry at People's Church, but also Healthy Youth Ministry Conference? And just make it easy for people to get a hold of you here.
Man, I think the easiest way is the IG is Instagram at Joseph Kellogg is the easiest. I used to. I don't even tweet anymore. I'll retweet every once in a while. I jump on Facebook every once in a while, but man, Instagram's the world I live in the most. And so don't slide into the DMs, but you can DM me. Hey, all right.
What's funny is for everyone listening right now, that's how I connected with Joseph, because I sent him a DM through Instagram.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey man, I'd love to meet. And he was like, let's connect, And so that's really cool.
Love it.
Really, really good. Hey, once again, you're joining us right now. Go ahead and click on the share button. Do us a favor and spread the word, because a lot of people are going to love this conversation that we're going to have called Intentional Hustle. So, Joseph, Peter and I are going to do our best to not interrupt you and to let you. You better close that. You pull that hat down, buddy. No, we're going to definitely enter into the conversation, but you got so much good stuff to say. So we're going to let you just take it and run with it. And we are going to interrupt you. It's just going to happen because there's going to be stuff you're going to say that we're going to want to dial in on and double click on a little bit. But go ahead, just jump into this conversation about intentional hustle, especially in ministry context.
Man, dude, first, Aaron, thank you so much for creating a platform. I really do love youth pastors and love guys like you that are advocating for youth pastors. That, man, for me to keep a youth pastor in the game is a big deal. And platforms like this and content and giving them opportunities to just engage in different conversations is really big. So thanks for that. Yeah, man, intentional hustle. I'll tell you where this talk actually kind of originated from was when I was transitioning from the Oaks. I had the opportunity to actually raise up one of our interns who interned with me for years. His name is Andrew Prescott, and got the opportunity to actually, hand the youth ministry over to him. It was super fun. And I'll talk more about that in this talk, but I actually started writing down some of these thoughts to kind of give him as like, hey, listen, as you jump into youth ministry, as the guy, you're the leader. You're no longer an intern. You're no longer a ministry associate. You're no longer, the associate youth pastor. You are the youth pastor of Oaks Youth. Dude, man, I really think this could be kind of a map for you. And so as I prayed, I wrote down some of these things that I'm going to share with you today. But understand, it actually started out, this conversation started out as a document that I was handing off to the guy that was taking over for me after serving 9 years in youth ministry there at the Oaks. And it really was circled around this idea of intentionality. And then I kind of morphed this into not just intentionality, but intentional hustle. We use the word hustle a lot in ministry. And man, it's going to take work. Can I just say that?
Right.
For things to grow, it's going to take some hustling, and I say it this way, like healthy things grow, but you can't get healthy without a little hustle. And I think that it's not just about like, let me try harder. I think about like my kids and different phases of life, and it's like they're trying to do something and they can't figure it out. You say it's opening something or playing with a toy, and so what they do, they just try hard. Let me just try harder. I don't think it's about like striving. I think it's really about thriving. And my heart is this: to not just hustle carelessly, but hustle intentionally, because I believe intentional hustle equals a consistent harvest. And so I'll say that again, rewind. Intentional hustle equals a consistent harvest. I've heard it said this way, healthy hustle produces a healthy harvest. And it's for us, man, let's continue to hustle. But man, what are you hustling in? It's the worst things to be doing, the wrong thing, even though you feel like it's the right thing. And so it's, you have a lot of energy, and that could be an event, that can be, a focus, and you're hustling, you're working 40, 50 hours a week, but you're not seeing any results because I think your hustle's not being consistent. And so, man, for me, that's kind of the heart is to have, and I think I say this as an old guy, underneath this hat, some gray hair. And so,
you can shave it off, man. That's what I do. Just get rid of it.
or for Aaron, no hair, and so, it's like when you're in the game a little longer, I remember early on, I just wanted to build something. I just wanted to grow something. And I worked extremely hard at that. But as you start getting older, you realize, man, I want legacy type harvest.
Yeah.
I want something that goes beyond me. And I learned in youth ministry, man, you can have, especially in our social media world, because I started youth ministry pre-social media. All right. And so we live in a highlight society, man. How can I do something in 15 seconds or 30 seconds or 60 seconds? And you have, youth pastors, doing everything they can to have that one clip, and everyone's trying to go viral,
Yeah.
And to me, anyone can make a highlight, but God's calling us to make history. And I think that's the big difference. Man, how are you going to make history? It's not just about hustling. It's about having an intentional hustle.
I love
and
it.
Yeah.
Well, and I just one thought, and then just, I know you got a bunch of like real practical ways to encourage us with our intentionality.
Yeah.
But like, it is very hard for us, I think, in American culture and American church culture, to not believe in the like overnight success concept. Like, I'm gonna hit the one grand slam and boom, it's all gonna happen. And I know it's funny, Joseph. I started in youth ministry full time the same year you did in 2001. And I definitely thought that when I started was like, boy, if I just kind of hit some grand slams, then boom, it's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I love this talk and where it's going. You got a whole list of like just practical, intentional things. Why don't you go ahead and work us through the list? And let me just say this to those of you that are watching right now, feel free to drop some comments. Feel free to drop some questions. Joseph would love to connect with you and take your questions today. But man, go ahead and work us through some of these practical steps you got going on here.
Man, I think even what you said is just trying to, there's sometimes we try to think of the shortcuts, but man, you can't shortcut real genuine growth, because man, all of us, I always say, give me enough money and enough pizza, and I can get a lot of kids at an event for one night.
Yeah.
And the thing is as longer you're in youth ministry, you realize, man, how do I get students to live for Jesus the rest of their life? Like that's right. What it's really all about. And so, man, I'll open up, man. This verse in Ephesians, Paul writes to the church of Ephesus, and he says this. He says, "So be careful how you live." And so, man, that we can just break apart this scripture. Like, man, be careful. Like that means you have an understanding of what you're doing. So don't live like fools. Maybe even a way to put it in youth ministry context, don't lead like fools, but like those who are wise. And he says, make the most of every opportunity in these evil days. And this is what he says, don't act thoughtlessly, but understand what the Lord wants you to do. And in the Passion Translation, it says it this way: take advantage of every day as you spend your life for his purpose. Man, that's what I want to do. I want to spend my life for his purpose. And I don't want to do things just like thoughtlessly, or the mentality that we live in today in youth ministry and church culture, copy and paste. I'm just going to copy what they're doing and do it here. No, I mean, God, what are you saying? I need to make the most of every opportunity. So yeah, man, I have a few areas, and I'll go rapid fire on some of these. And let's remember, man, the first time I wrote this was to help a new youth pastor who was 23 years old, taking over an amazing youth ministry, and was like, man, hey, what if you were intentional in these areas? And so put that in your framework as we're working through some of these. And they all, man, I'm a preacher, so they all start with, they all have P's in them. So come on, somebody.
Let's go.
And so
anointed that way.
That's right. And so, man, here's a few areas of intentionality in youth ministry. Man, my challenge is that you have an intentional hustle. The first one is this: be intentional in your presence. And what I mean by that is just being present. Man, as a youth pastor, that you're present. I know that. I mean, I even was talking to some students the other day, and they were talking about a leader, and they're like, man, he just looks unapproachable. I'm like, what do you mean? And they literally took their phone out and kind of like did the example. And I'm like, wow, like for that teenager, what seems unapproachable is that the youth pastor or the leader wasn't engaged. And so, man, be present. Be present on Sundays. Man, be present on Wednesdays. Like, man, be there. You only have a few Wednesdays left, especially during COVID. Man, those Wednesdays live in person, they became like, man, I can't believe we're getting to do this. Like, we went 6 months without having a youth service. And now, to think about it, for us, we only have 5 youth services left. Man, how are we going to be present in every one of those? And the other thing is be present, with schools, in schools. Your presence should be felt by students. And you might have heard it said it like this: is if you were to leave, or your church was to leave your community, would people realize it? And I would even say this about your presence: if you were to move, is your schools in your area, would they be sad that you moved from their city? And I think, are you going to be missed? And that's going to be based on your presence. And I'm just a big believer, man, your presence matters. If we're shepherds, we need to smell like sheep, like Jesus walked slowly through the crowd. And for me, man, still today, I spend on average probably 6 to 8 hours a week on campus. I'm not even a youth pastor. I don't have like my own campus to be a youth pastor, if that makes sense. I'm the NextGen Pastor. I oversee multiple campuses, but I'm still in the trenches of a local high school. And so I just believe in, man, being there with students, doing everything you can, and just your presence matters. Okay. I think about, the woman touching Jesus, like at the hem of his garment. We all know it. We preach it. That was an interruption to his day. But man, when you're being present, this is what I know is, man, interruptions are opportunities for impartation. And God, give me more interruptions. But for me to be interrupted, I need to be close enough to people so they can touch me. And so that they can feel what is going on in my life. And for me, that's on a Friday night, man, dude, it's at the football game. It's at a football practice, man, it's in the bleachers. It's, man, being present and being intentional in that presence. Understand, this is why I'm here. I'm trying to make an impact. And if a student never comes to my youth ministry, dude, I brought youth ministry to them. and I'm in the locker room with them and with those coaches. And so, man, I'm really passionate about this. I could do a whole talk just on this, on just, man, campus ministry, being present. And we've just seen it practically. Man, we've done it for years, but something we started doing at the Oaks more intentionally and more consistently was something we call Gatorade drops, where we just literally brought Gatorade to football teams every week. And what's crazy is Gatorade opened the door to the gospel. And so then we started seeing students' lives change, students water baptized, and there's still students. Some of them went to our youth ministry, some of them didn't, that literally I'm still their youth pastor, even though they might have not have been there every Wednesday night. It was because I was present in their world, and I still am. There's a young man that plays football at Arizona State. Man, I go once a year to go watch him play. I have a young man that plays for the Philadelphia Eagles. And, dude, him and I are texting back and forth. Had his first last week. And this is what's awesome is, like, I'm still in their world because youth ministry doesn't stop when students graduate. And so, man, I'm kind of going off somewhere else there, but it all started with just my presence and me being intentional with my presence, that I'm going to be here and I'm not going to be somewhere else, man, because the person right in front of me is the most important right now. And I've been guilty of walking too fast through the crowd or being distracted. And so, man, just one area of intentionality is just be intentional with your presence, man. Where are you going and how are you like living Jesus out when you're there?
Yeah, quick question, Joseph. What is the enemy of our being intentional with our presence? Like, why do you think youth pastors of all kinds and all different contexts struggle with this principle right here?
Man, I think the greatest enemy is what we would call busyness. Because to be intentional with your presence, this is a whole nother talk, and it's not in here, but it was to be intentional with your calendar. What gets on your calendar gets done. And so if you don't have moments of intentionality on your calendar, hey, I'm going to be at the football field here. I'm going to be at practice here. I got to leave work to get there. I think the busyness gets in our way. And then I would say too is, man, because of this, I think the scroll gets in our way. I think we find ourselves with our head down when there's so many things happening around us. And again, I've been guilty of that too. And so, I think a lack of intentionality in our calendar planning, because, man, it's so crazy because people be like, and intentionality is all about that focus, but I just think that guys are like, oh, I got to work on this. And what happens is, and we'll talk about it later, they're working so hard on their preaching that they actually don't realize that their presence actually impacts their preaching. And so, man, when I'm present with a student, when I'm writing my message, I'm going to have that student in mind because I was living up close with them. I think we've created CEO youth pastors or youth pastors that are behind their phones and they don't smell like sheep anymore. And so there's a disconnect in actually connecting with students because they don't even know what's going on in the student's life anymore.
Man, I struggled with this so much, in youth ministry, and part of it I think was a personality thing. I'm a little bit more of an introvert, and so it was easy for me to kind of hide out. And then, speaking of good words that start with the letter P, right? For me, it was I wanted the preaching to be great, and I wanted the program to be great, and I ended up having to learn the hard way that what you're saying right now, the ministry of presence, had to be the number one priority, and those other things had to fall, in comparison to that. So this is so good.
Yeah.
Those of you that are watching right now, feel free to jump in and ask us some questions. But Joseph, I'm gonna kick it right back to you because I know you got a lot more tips for us.
And I would say too, the thing is and the word hustle is work. It's going to take work. And I'll tell you, the largest our youth ministry numerically had ever been at the Oaks is when we had been present on campus for years. And because when you're faithful over time, you start seeing fruit. And that's that consistency. And so, be intentional with your presence, man. I'll jump through these other ones pretty quick. Be intentional with parents. Parents are the gatekeepers. Man, don't forget that. I know for me, having teenagers in our youth ministry, like my own kids, but also just understanding that, man, be intentional that your parents are your greatest partner and figure out ways to partner with them. What we did at the Oaks, man, we sent weekly emails to parents. Now even there at the Oaks, Andrew's using something called Community, and literally he's texting parents, sending them videos. We're just really intentional parents. I didn't want a parent to come up to me and go, I didn't know. No, actually, we're going to bombard you with communication, and we're going to invite you to be a part of what we're doing. So, man, be intentional with parents. Think like a parent. When I had a lot of young leaders, I would go, think like a parent. When you think like a parent, you won't play the games that you end up playing. You won't do some of the stupid stuff you do. And think like a parent. Be intentional. Don't just like, oh, we're partnering with parents. Here's a piece of paper. Be intentional, man. How are you equipping them, giving them resources? And because this was early on in ministry, I realized like, I had young kids and I was still trying to figure out parenting, but you're the expert. You're the one that's in the trenches of youth ministry. So when a parent has that 15-year-old, they're looking at you going, help me. And so, man, do everything you can to be intentional with them. The next thing, man, intentional hustle. Be intentional with your posture, your posture. And this is a leadership axiom. Man, this has hurt me in the past. It's just understand as a leader, your body language says a lot about you and how people view you. Your posture, not your position, will give you influence. And I love this. 2 Chronicles 20:18. It says, then Jehoshaphat, which that's my guy, Jehoshaphat, he knelt down, bowing his face to the ground. And it said all Judea and Jerusalem did the same. And just know that your posture matters. Man, you want students to pray like you, model it with your posture. Man, I just know even in meetings, man, understand that my posture, man, my body language says so much. And so be intentional. I always, there's a little thing that helped me because I am naturally loud, opinionated. I would consider myself kind of a strong verbal leader. And I've gotten myself in trouble in peer-to-peer relationship with other staff members and maybe even with students. And so I think through this, how would a top leader act? A top level leader, TOP. And it helps me process. I need to watch my tone, T. I need to watch my opinions, O, and then P, posture. Man, and so when I'm coming to a meeting, especially when I know the meeting can be a meeting that I might find myself being more aggressive, I got to go, how's my tone right now? Man, are these opinions? And then how's my body language? Am I leaned in? What's that look like? So be intentional in your posture. The next one is be intentional with other pastors on staff. We won't stay here long, but just know that it's important. Man, you're on the team with other pastors. We're trying to accomplish the same thing. Man, where we move together. I'm actually listening to a book right now. I don't know. I'm actually doing my master's with SEU, and so I have tons of books that I'm having to read. But I like to listen to books as well, and I want to listen to books that kind of that aren't your normal books. So I'm listening to the book Extreme Ownership right now, which is incredible. It's from a couple of Navy SEALs, and they talk about this. Like, it's not about you versus them. It's about us. And so just be intentional with other pastors. Early on in ministry, for some of the young youth pastors, I just thought the youth ministry worked harder than everybody else. And I just kind of like, what's the worship guys even do? What are they? And I found myself kind of judging because I was trying to compare my hustle to someone else's. Can I just tell you, like, that doesn't help the kingdom. Everyone has a part. There's a different part of the body that helps a church be healthy and grow. Yeah. And youth ministry is different because we work with a group of people that don't sleep. Like, the worship team is not having all-nighters. You know what I'm saying? Like, right. They're not doing big, like they're not at football games. That's not, but they're at rehearsals when you're at home. And so it's understanding, like, hey, I need to be intentional in how I'm engaging other staff members and how I can serve. Man, just even ask that question, man, hey, how can I help you? And man, you create that. You're like, well, no one asked me that question. Well, you know what? You be the leader, extreme ownership. You lead the way. Man, why don't you go along and serve some pastors that are around you as well? So
yeah, that's real good,
like
man.
I'm sitting up straighter already, Peter. I don't know about you. Like, I'm already working on my posture.
I naturally slouch. The next one is be intentional in your preparation. I'm a big preparation guy. Like, man, figure out a way to get in your schedule like every day. If I have a meeting at 9, man, I'm preparing at 8. I'm always taking time to prepare for my meetings. I'll get in there and have stuff already on the whiteboard before they show up. Preparing the environment. And so in leading meetings and conversations, small groups, sermon preparation, be intentional with your preparation. When you don't have margin, you lose creativity. And so, man, to be prepared, like, it's such a big deal. Like, and so it just shows that what you're doing matters. I'm a big, Peter Reeves knows this, man. I've been in the trenches of high school football. This is my 20th season, to be in the locker rooms, on the sidelines, engaging with coaches. And preparation is such a big deal to win the game. And there's preparations and meetings and practices, and you talk through, you walk through, you run through. There's all this preparation for this game on Friday night. And I think the church doesn't do a lot of preparing. We just sometimes like, oh God, you do your will. And then we like go play golf. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, I just don't know how much God's going to honor you. Man, I just believe he honors preparation. But for me, it's being intentional hustle. Again, man, I want my hustle to actually produce a harvest. I got to be intentional in preparation.
Dude,
go ahead.
Jump in here real quick. That's because this is so good. So I don't know who this quote is from, but when you're saying that, and I might butcher the quote a little bit, but something to the effect of we generally don't lead at the level of our max ability or max talent. We lead at the level of our preparation.
Yeah, it's good.
And so I'm just thinking about that as you're saying that. And man, so let's just pause here for a second. And Peter, I want to ask you a question, kind of draw you into the conversation. What are some practical things you're doing right now as a youth pastor in your setting in this area of being intentional when it comes to preparation?
Yeah, I think the simple things, man, we are a month out on everything that we're doing, at least. That's the minimum. So being a month out on everything, constantly having conversations and being strategic about delegation so that, man, I'm not the only brain thinking about the important things that have to happen in our ministries. Also, just really, everyone knows the power of this, yet sometimes it gets lost in the mix, is the power of the joint calendar, right? Like, this is an easy way. I actually, and I joke about this, but it's so helpful. Like, my admin, she sends me a list of things like, hey, this is what you need to know for kids. This is what you need to know for young adults. This is what you need to know for youth. And here's the things you got to start thinking about, right? So that kind of helps me a little bit as well. But just dream, I love what Joseph said about having intentional margin. He taught me this a long time ago. And so for me to be prepared, a lot of like on Thursdays, it's my day to really take out a piece of white paper, sit in a coffee shop, and just brain dump everything I'm thinking about for the week. And I come up with awesome ideas in that time. And I come up with ideas that should never be done in that time. And I think through my favorite thing right now is like during that time, I've been thinking through old worship songs and like trying to figure out the heart of them. And there might be a phrase that comes from that, or a thought or a feeling that I can expound on. It inspires me. So just a bunch of that stuff too. And then on top of that, man, to be intentional with preparation is I'm constantly having conversations with people who are where I'm not at. Because I think that's a part of preparation too, is like, I've even talked to Andrew so many times, like, hey bro, the way you're doing things are so different. And I love the results I see. So talk to me about your preparation. And then this is where I learned that Andrew doesn't play no games. He has an I-5, an E6, a D7. I'm like, my God, this dude is like, God. So I learned a lot from just even talking with him. And this is part of the preparation game, is that there's someone that might be doing it better than you. And if there's even one nugget you can steal to enhance your game, baby, let's do it. So those are some of the things I'm doing.
So good.
Yeah.
Well, listen, if you're just joining us, you just jumped on a live stream a minute ago. We're talking with Joseph Kellogg about intentional hustle. And this you're just giving us gold. So I want to send it right back to you, man. Just keep on working through some of these practical tips here.
Man, so I love that. I love it as a youth pastor coach, because literally you saying what Andrew does, I was actually about to break that down, because he adopted some of those letter systems. But it's framework. Framework helps you in preparation, and so like in my meetings I have, and I won't have time to go into them right now, so I'll just tease you with it for a later talk. But there's all these things. So I have structure to my meetings that I can literally, if I don't have a lot of margin, that meeting can still go great because I have framework. We're just not guessing. Man, there's we're going to inspire, involve, inform. Like, we're going to create moments. Like, there's a framework in my mind. If we're going to evaluate, there's framework. And that margin's so important, because if you're going meeting to meeting, man, each meeting just starts getting worse. and it's like, and people, you don't want to waste people's time.
Yeah.
And so anyway, in preparation, man, this next one I love, man. We got a preacher in the house as well with my guy Pete Reeves. But man, be intentional in what you're preaching. Man, be intentional in what you're preaching. I believe that, man, for again almost 20 years, our sermon series, our content has created a lot of momentum for us. Like people's like, oh man, just really a series. Yeah, you don't have to add all this. The gospel's enough, and I just believe that. And man, we can have a whole conversation about communication. But as Paul says, it is this sacred trust that we have to preach the good news.
Yeah.
And I'll quote a couple of guys. My friend Dan Leanne says this about preaching. He says, preaching is yelling what God is whispering. And I'm like, man, that means we have to be close enough to God to hear him whisper. And then I love what Jensen Franklin says. It's okay to get out of the box, just thinking about creativity, but stay in the book. And literally, I just think a lot of youth pastors are spending way more time on a TikTok video than they are spending time preaching the truth. And I just think the truth is what sets people free. Yeah. I'm not against TikTok. Go for it. But I just really believe that it's God's word that, man, and when I look back in my years in the trenches of youth ministry, it was, man, giving students the opportunity to respond to the gospel and, preaching what God is saying to you and not just what you watch on YouTube. I didn't have, Aaron, you said it, man, 2001, I couldn't jump on and see someone preach on YouTube.
Nope.
I had to literally get my Bible and say, God, what are you saying to our students? Yep. Help me, Jesus, preach this word. Yep. I couldn't find a tweet and go, ooh, what I'll take. There was none of that. And I'm thankful for all those things. Yeah. Man, I'm inspired, and I repost people's stuff all the time on my Instagram stories, but I just didn't have that. So there's a part of me, I'm thankful for that, because I found myself hearing from God early on. And man, just fresh manna. Students need fresh manna. They don't need leftover manna from someone else. They need fresh manna in your context to your students. And speak to today. Speak what's going on in the world. Don't be ashamed. Don't be afraid to talk about topics that are hard, because the Bible talks about them. Just speak God's word. And man, I'm just a big believer in that. And I'll even say this, I put this in my notes here, but something I do for myself, I ask myself, this helped me so much. It took the pressure off. And Scott Wilson, actually under his leadership, helped me with a couple of these. Was after I'm done preaching, can I answer these three questions with yes? Did I preach Jesus? Yes. Did I love them? Did I love the people in the room? Like, man, when I was preaching, did I see James on the third row and I know what's going on with James? Did I have compassion on that student? Like, or was I just preaching clever content? And so did I preach Jesus? Yes. Did I love them? And the last one's the one that I think's kept me in the game and I still enjoy what I'm doing. Did I have fun? It should be fun doing what God's created you to do. And it should be fun declaring truth to a generation. And so at the end of the night, when I walk up the stage or after my time praying with students, man, did I preach Jesus? Yes. Did I love them? Yes. Did I have fun? Yes. So it didn't matter if the altars were full or empty. If I can answer those three questions, I know that I did my job. And man, I was intentional in what I was preaching.
Yeah. That's super good. Yeah, Joseph, I think a lot of people, like when it comes to this topic of preaching, I think a lot of youth pastors often they're kind of insecure about what they're preaching because they hear so many great speakers and they're hearing so many awesome people talk about different things. How do you find confidence to be intentional about your preaching? And what would you say to the person that's insecure about maybe the way they communicate the gospel?
Man, that's a great question, Peter. Is this is going to sound funny. I'll just be me. People ask like, who's your favorite preacher? Man, I don't know if I have a favorite preacher, but if you were to ask me what preacher I listen to the most, I would say me. I've listened to my sermons more than any other sermon. You're like, really? Yeah, because I'm just trying to get better. And my style is my style. If I find myself, now I listen to a lot of content when it comes to leadership, but preaching, I just learned early on, man, I love me some TD Jakes. Come on, somebody. Get ready. And I literally, I can, when I first started preaching, I started preaching a lot when I was about 18 years old. And I was doing like youth revivals and all this stuff, wearing 3-piece suits. Okay.
Let's go.
Because come on, man. No hat on. You know what I'm saying?
He said 3-piece suit, pinstripes. Boom, boom, boom.
Oh, yeah, man.
You really do like TD Jakes. That's why man. Was it a long daggy suit too?
Oh, yeah. Oh, heck yeah. Sweat towel. Man, I had some black and white shoes, you know what I'm saying? Like I'm a wingtip. And it's like I'm preaching. I remember preaching at our youth revival, and all my friends were there. And so I'm up there preaching, you know who Jesus is. He's the Alpha, the Almighty. He's the bread of life. He's alphabetical order saying who Jesus is. He's the soon coming King. And so what's crazy is that's not me. I'm preaching, but then I found myself telling a story, and again, I was a high school student. I started telling a story, and the room started laughing, and they were engaging. And I realized, like, dude, that. For a moment in that message, my voice was probably about 10 minutes of it, and the rest of it was someone else's voice. And the moment that made the biggest like impact in the room was when it was my voice.
Yeah.
And so now I went on a journey for a few years trying to find my voice. But the best way for me was I was just confident God gave me this message for these students.
Yeah.
I don't have to compare to Furtick because my kids aren't in the they're not looking for Furtick. You know what I'm saying? They want to hear the guy that's in their world and with them. And so, and I think that helped me. And just having that confidence that God called me, man, this is my assignment. He gave me this word. I'm confident in that. Yes, there's better communicators than me. It's something I say at the end of my prayer sometimes when I preach, and I actually got this from Jason Laird, is in my prayer, I'll literally say before I say amen, and God, we know there's no great preachers, only the great gospel. So let your good news be proclaimed. Because God's not up in heaven going, ha ha, man, he's a 5-star, like it's like recruits and he's 4-star preacher, 3-star preacher. No, it's about the impact of the room. Yeah. And so, man, I think I answered your question a little bit, Peter, but I do think it's a journey. And I think because I wasn't in that social media bubble early on in ministry, I got to gain some confidence. So when I looked at it, I was like, and it's just about knowing your voice, you know what I'm saying? And going, man, this is my voice and I'm going to be me. And no one else can do that but me.
And let me add a couple thoughts in here too. I mean, thought number one, my favorite preacher is Peter Reeves. So
God.
Come on.
I love you, bro. But I think it can be helpful for you and I, when we're serving in a youth pastor role, to be okay with there is a difference in preaching between the youth pastor and maybe the traveling evangelist, conference speaker, or the lead pastor at a large, maybe progressive church, right? And so when you play that comparison game, everyone loses, but the person who loses the most is your students. Because I just want to like highlight and emphasize what you said, Joseph. They want to hear your voice. You're their youth pastor. You are the shepherd that God has called and anointed and brought into their life, right? And so if you allow yourself to get all insecure and play the comparison game, you just diminish your own voice and your own anointing that God has birthed within you in that moment. And I think even stylistically, there's a way of preaching that can work really, really well at a youth convention or a youth camp or a conference, right? But that doesn't necessarily work in a week in, week out youth ministry setting. In fact, I would say most times I don't think it does work, right? And so it's going to be different for you, but it needs to be. That's the point. It needs to be. And so
that's good.
If you're a youth pastor and your goal is, I want every single week my message to be as good as whatever dude or whatever girl you heard at the last camp or the last conference or the last convention, you're shortchanging your kids. In that moment, right? That's not what they need. They needed that when you took them to that event, but now they need you.
That's
and
good.
and you to be anointed in presenting what God has put in your heart to present. So
Yeah, true
Man.
story right here. Like I learned under Joseph that like, and I still do it to this day. It's the small scriptures or phrases in scripture that capture my heart. That's the stuff I'm preaching because I'm passionate about it. I don't have to constantly look down at my notes to do it. Like it's in me, and so I can say it. And even just comparing like that conference speaker to your Wednesday night, it's like, you might get up there and preach this dynamite message that you're hoping to preach at a convention one day, and your kids are going, so how do I get my friends to come here? So do I obey my mom and dad, or because they're not saved, or what do I do? Like these kids have genuine questions that when you're so focused on wowing them, you can't even minister to their direct need that would truly take them into a level where they could become more like Christ. And I learned that the hard way, man, just by doing stuff that was just dumb. Like, isn't this sermon title so cool? Yeah, so cool that no student's going to remember it. And we're still sitting with our 20 students here because you won't equip, your kids to learn how to share the gospel, Pete. Really cool. It looks good on IG though. And if we take the picture from this lens, it'll look like 1,000 students are plus, been there, done that.
You're trying to preach a sermon at like the sermon you're listening to that you love so much. That guy's probably preached that 20 times or more. So no wonder it's
or they have a preaching team, and it's just you it's just and a Bible unfair. That is in this little print. Your army Bible. It's like, bro, give yourself a break and hear from heaven. You know what I mean? Like hear from heaven.
It's so good. So good. Listen, we got a couple minutes left. Those of you that are watching right now, feel free to drop your questions, your comments in the chat right now. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to invite you to be a part of this conversation. But until we get some questions from those of you watching, Joseph, I'm going to turn it back to you. We got a couple more here. If we make it through all of them, great. If not, feel free to jump to whatever ones are you most excited about hitting us with.
Yeah, I'm gonna skip down a couple just because even what Peter said there at the end of just like hear from heaven. Man, great communicators are like great golfers. You've got to know your club selection. And so speaking at a conference, speaking on a podcast, man, it's all about the right club. But I've always said, man, my students got the best because I've had the opportunity to travel. They got the best of me, and then everyone else got the rest of me. But what's funny is when you're preaching to a crowd that doesn't know you, they think your stuff's funny. They think your stuff's the best. And then they're clapping because it's the environment. Dude, I'm back in my play, back in our youth ministry, and no one's clapping, but they're leaning. But what's cool? They're leaning in. They're taking notes. They're there, but it's not about the hype. It's about man, you're with them. So hey, I'll say this. Man, I'll just hit a couple more. Is be intentional with your prayers. Like, be intentional with praying. Pray bold prayers. Remember that your greatest tool for maximum kingdom impact is and always will be prayer. Remember to obey his voice when he speaks. Influence follows obedience. Second Chronicles 27:6 says this: King Jotham became powerful because he was careful to live in obedience to the Lord his God. Man, dude, you can make the greatest impact when you're just hearing from God. The battle's won in prayer. Mark Batterson said it like this: who you are or who you become is determined by how you pray. Youth pastor, who you are is determined by how you pray. For me early on, man, it was the fasting, it was the praying, it was going after Jesus in that way, spending hours of prayer, man, because I couldn't believe I was getting paid to work at a church. And so I just worked it out in my schedule, especially when I didn't have a staff. And I would just spend times praying, man, praying over every chair, turning music on, and dude, God sees that. This next one, just speaking about preaching and prayer, E.M. Bounds, who's like a G when it comes to writing about prayer, he says this: he who does not plow in his prayer closet will never reap in his pulpit. Woo! My. E.M. Bounds. And so, man, just be intentional in your prayer. Like, I think it's huge. What'd he say?
Ian Bounds also said, if you are weak in prayer, you are weak in all things.
Yeah, exactly. You're right. And even for us, like, man, the youth pastors, man, Monday's our big meeting day. Every Monday we fast and pray from noon to 1. We spend time and pray. And then we say, what's God saying? And this is what's cool, because for us, we're a multi-site campus. How do you create alignment within your multi-site? Prayer. Create like the common language is prayer. And so, man, that's a big deal for us. I'll hit this kind of last one. that I'm super passionate about is be intentional with passing the baton. Man, there's no success without a successor. Who's next?
Yeah.
Who are you preparing? Who are you raising up to release out? If Jesus did it, I'm down. To even put it this way, who are you reproducing? And we're called to reproduce. Follow Jesus as follow me as I follow Jesus. One of my life mottos is, if Jesus did it, I'm down. 1 John 2:6, man, whatever Jesus did, man, walk like him, live like him. And I just really believe when it comes to legacy, it's about passing on to the next generation. And I've had the privilege, it's pretty cool, just a couple of months ago, that we hit a number that I was my goal was to hit by the time I ended 20 years of youth ministry, but 100 former students, interns, and leaders are in full-time ministry around the world. Wow. And man, super pumped about that. But that didn't happen by accident. That happened with me and spending trips and bringing guys like Peter on trips with me and spending time and investing. And at every place I've been, check this out, every place I've been. Now, sometimes the pastor didn't let it happen because they weren't ready for that exchange. But every place I've served, I had the baton ready to hand off to the next leader that I was investing in. And it was beautiful that I got to actually do it at the Oaks with Andrew. And man, I'm telling you, the ministry continues to go on. Everything continues to move forward. But it also takes you having this, getting the ego out of the way and saying, man, what am I doing to intentionally spend time with people that are next? Who's the next youth pastor? Who's your next gen pastor? Who's your next, and this is what's crazy. In the last 2 weeks, I've talked to pastors, youth pastors about, hey, man, I'm transitioning. Do you have a guy? A pastor, hey, do you have a guy? And you guys probably get those calls too. And I always want to, but I never do because I'm nice. I always want to go, where's the guy? He should be, or the girl should be right there under you. Like, what do you mean that you're transitioning, but you didn't have a plan? You weren't investing in someone. And a part of that is you talking about intentionality. You got to be intentional in raising up the next leader. And so, man, that's just my last challenge, would literally just be persistent in your intentionality. Don't give up. Keep being intentional. Intentional leadership over time becomes intuitive leadership. What starts out of you being intentional will slowly become just who you are. It will be intuitive to you as a leader. Yeah. And like I said, I could talk for so long. John Brown, who's a great friend of mine, he was at HYM, and I spent a little time talking about this at our conference, and he just came up to me and encouraged me. He just said, Joseph, I want more of that. He said, just more people need to hear about that. And I'm actually right now, I'm writing a 12-page paper in my master's that's talking about legacy leadership and succession plan, because I believe that we're the greater pandemic in the church is pastors and leaders not raising up pastors and leaders. Yeah. And I just believe that, man, we're going to have a deficit in the church world. And you have a lot of young leaders going to just go plant churches, and then they burn out and die. They burn out and go sell insurance. They burn out because a pastor didn't raise them up to release them. And they feel, well, I guess the only thing I can do is go church planting, which I love church planting, but do it if you're called to it. And so anyway, I'm talking, if there was like a seat I could sit in, I'm just passionate about this. It takes hard work. It takes tons of intentionality, but man, if you do it, it's beautiful.
Joseph,
so good, man.
When you turn that paper in and you get like an A++++ on it, movie quote there for somebody who didn't get that. Then it's got to be a book next, and Peter will write the foreword to the book for you. So,
come on,
gladly.
Let's go. I'm just speaking that
gladly
right now, man. I don't know if you've written the book or not, but like that's a book right there. That needs to be something that youth pastors and church leaders all over are really getting that word deep in their heart, because you're talking about, just really honestly, you're talking about biblical discipleship.
Yeah.
And raising up others, and there's no success without the successor. It's so good.
It's crazy because Jesus did it. Jesus literally released the future of the church to these guys that he invested in for 3 years. But he was so intentional in those 3 years. And so even the thought of not just the paper, but is why do some leaders leave a legacy and some leaders just leave? Man, having that legacy mindset is so critical. And if you're a youth pastor at 23, you can have a legacy mindset. If you're a youth pastor at 30, you can have a legacy mindset, and just constantly thinking, man, there's a 15-year-old in my youth ministry that's going to take my place.
Yeah.
Man, and what am I doing to prepare them to get there? And just take, and you're like, well, how do I do it? A lot of people, dude, do it what Jesus did. Expose them to you. Like, just, hey, you want to roll with me? You want to go with me? You want to hang with me? Like, that's how you disciple. And I think that we've overcomplicated this thing. Just do life with people. Jesus did it. I'm down.
Do life with them and call them to another level too. I think that's sometimes we miss the front end or the back end. So sometimes we're too busy doing whatever we're doing with our program or our ministry, and we're not really doing life and building the relationship, being intentional with presence, like you said earlier. But then sometimes we also forget the calling we have on our life as leaders to call people higher. And to call out of them purpose, and to call out of them the plan of God that's in their life, and the calling of God that rests within them, right? So Peter, give us just, kind of help us land the plane here, so to speak, and, just some of your thoughts here. This has been such a good session.
Yeah.
Man.
Dude, I'm back here writing down stuff that you guys are saying. Like, I heard this talk already, but it was so good. I think as a young leader, man, like, it's just so evident that sometimes you think that people like you guys have just gotten into the places that the Lord has elevated you simply because you landed in the right spot. But now, just even listening to this talk again, it's not that you landed in the right spot. It's that you created the environment for the things that you were passionate about and the things that the Lord put in your heart to succeed. And I really believe in it, because everything you're talking about right now puts it all on the leader who's listening to create and to form and to shape. And my mind is just stirred listening to this conversation. And I'm like, wow, this was super good. Intentional hustle. This is like a talk too that can be, we talk about stealing. I mean, I'm a professional robber sometimes in youth ministry. Give me that, whatever. Bill Johnson, give me that. Robert Madu, what'd you say? I'll take it. But like, just this is a talk that can be reproduced, and it is almost a checklist. That's what I was like. I was transferring all the notes that you sent me and Aaron into a checklist. Boom, I need to save this right now. I cannot forget, because I got something right after this. This is like a checklist you can constantly come back to, like, hey, I realize I have not been intentional here. So you don't even have to create your workload. Just look at this list.
Yeah.
Like, it's so good. Yeah. So helpful. And I think sometimes, as youth pastors, like, some guys will even ask me, I'm still young. They'll say, well, what do you do every day? And I'm like, this list, bro. This is what I'm doing every day. It's so helpful, Joseph. Yeah. Thank you. You're a beast. And we appreciate the investment, bro. Wow.
Joseph, thanks so much for joining us today.
Brilliant.
We're just honored to have you here. Thanks for investing and pouring into those that are watching right now. Those that are going to be listening a little bit later on the podcast. And we do remind you that all the audio from this goes into our podcast, which you can find at Lead the Generation on our website, leadthegeneration.com. You can also find and subscribe to the podcast on Apple, on Spotify. And hey, if you love the content that Peter and I are helping put together on a weekly basis, do us a couple favors. Leave a review on the podcast. Grab the Facebook page for Lead the Generation. Click on like, click on share the video, and we just want to spread the word. Especially when we have great leaders like Joseph on the podcast with us today. We appreciate you being here, and this has been an encouraging, inspiring conversation for us for sure. Once again, you can connect with Joseph on his Instagram at Joseph Kellogg. Also, I know that the Healthy Youth Ministry Conference actually just happened a couple weeks ago, but I think it's an annual event that happens in the fall, right? And
yes, sir.
So I would encourage you to go to their website. What is the website for the conference, Joseph?
It is hymconference.com, I think. And then we have an IG as well, HYM conference at HYM conference. And it's a bunch of practitioners that are run this thing. None of us are doing it full time, but God's hand's been on it. It's been fun.
Yeah, so good. So good. Yeah, I would encourage you to check it out and follow them, subscribe to a newsletter, or follow them on Instagram so that you can be in the know. And we're looking forward to that for sure. So thanks for being with us today. Remember, next week we'll be back at the same time with Wayne Morgan from National Network of Youth Ministries. And it's going to be a really compelling and inspiring story. And so we're excited you're here. We posted a link for HYM conference there in the comments as well. So we'd love for you to connect with Joseph in that way. Joseph, thanks for being with us. Peter, thanks for being the most amazing co-host
Let's
Yes.
go.
ever. We love you. Excited for you and your wife to get away at the Youth Pastors Retreat this weekend.
Come on. Thank you,
we'll see
bro.
all of you right back here 1 week from today. God bless you. We'll see you later.